It was a rainy night. In a dark room corner, Sarah stood, staring at the wall. A song she disliked played on the stereo box. Like a flash of lightning, Sarah's eyes looked almost white. Still staring at the wall, she said, "I know you're watching me. I can feel your scent." But when no reply came from the darkness, the blind Sarah subconsciously began to move toward the basement. As she felt the rope hanging from the ceiling, she trembled in fear. Suddenly, she climbed onto the table and put the rope around her neck. At that moment, someone gave the table a sudden push. Sarah struggled and died. Meanwhile, at the exact moment of Sarah's death, her twin sister Julia had a strange feeling. In the middle of her office work, Julia fell ill and had to be taken care of by her colleagues. She had a hunch that something had happened to her sister. The next morning, Julia set out with her husband Isaac. It had been 6 months since they last met Sarah. Arriving at the house and getting no response, they broke the door open. Inside, they found Sarah's body hanging in the basement. When the police arrived, Officer Demas reported that according to the forensic report, Sarah committed suicide during a blackout late at night. The possible cause of death was progressive vision loss, a disease that gradually causes blindness. Not only Sarah but Julia was also affected by it. This is why Julia occasionally experienced blackouts too. To prevent these episodes and avoid triggering mental stress, Isaac tried to keep her away from anything intense. These triggers could reduce the remaining lifespan of her vision. However, Julia didn't believe that Sarah was depressed just because of her blindness. Moreover, she had a second option, an eye donor. If a donor had been found, her surgery would have taken place. So the idea of her committing suicide just didn't make sense. As soon as the police left and the electricity came back, the same song started playing on the stereo again. Julia was startled for a moment. Sarah never liked that song. So someone else must have been there the night before. When Julia told Isaac about this, he found it unreasonable. No one had any contact with Sarah in the past 6 months. So there was no way of knowing what changes had occurred in her life during that time. But Julia refused to accept this. The next day at the funeral, Sarah's neighbor Blasco came with his daughter Leah. Since Leah had a good relationship with Sarah, she used to visit their house regularly. But no one imagined that Sarah would leave like this. Julia was sitting alone beside Sarah's grave when suddenly, she felt someone place a hand on her shoulder from behind. She thought it was Isaac, but he was standing at a distance, chatting. Startled, she turned around. No one was there. Later, Julia informed Demas about the stereo box music and the strange incident at the cemetery. But what could the police investigate? There were no fingerprints on Sarah's body. No one had seen her with any unknown person. Even Sarah's neighbor Sauter said the same. Sauter used to help Sarah with various things. When Julia visited Sarah's garden, she noticed a long rope hanging along the wall, a rope Sarah used to reach Salda's house. However, Julia was surprised upon meeting Sauter. He was blind too. But from him, she learned one important thing. For the past year, Sarah had been going to a place called the Bauman Center, where she made new friends. Following that lead, Julia went there and found it was a center for visually impaired people. They were already discussing Sarah's death. From a man named Minar, Julia learned that recently, Sarah had been dating someone of her age. They had even spent a week together at a couple's hotel called Hotel Romeo in Bella Vista. Suddenly, one of them exclaimed, "Julia, who have you brought here with you?" At that moment, someone was seen running away. Julia chased after them in panic. Hiding their identity in the darkness, the stranger ran off. Just as Julia was about to catch up, a series of camera flashes went off, and the person vanished. Running outside didn't help, she had lost them. Then, during a blackout, Julia fell. But she wasn't someone to give up. That night, Julia told Isaac everything that had happened. Isaac became angry and wanted to take her home. But Julia lied, saying she wanted to spend some intimate time with him, and came to Hotel Romeo instead. While Isaac was away, Julia tried to learn more about Sarah from the hotel manager and receptionist. But strangely, the previous month's data had been deleted from the system. An electrician named Crespulu was quietly listening to their conversation from a distance. During lunch in the guest room, a waiter named Pablo kept staring at Julia. Isaac noticed it too and jokingly pointed it out. While ordering from the menu, Isaac went to the room to fetch his reading glasses. Taking the chance, Julia asked Pablo if he knew anything about Sarah. Pablo replied, "Madam, I guessed your eye color would be green. And see, I was right." But Julia corrected him, "The person you saw last week was my twin sister. Did she come here with anyone? Do you remember anything?" Pablo couldn't describe anything clearly. She looked very ordinary. As far as he could tell, she seemed to be in pain. Actually, most of his attention had been on Sarah. After surgery, she had bandages on her eyes. Hearing this, Julia was shocked, because she believed her sister had never undergone surgery. She tried to ask more, but Pablo was called away. So now the question is, if Sarah did have her surgery, then why would she commit suicide out of depression? At that moment, Isaac revealed that he had found out from Dr. Roman that Sarah's surgery had been unsuccessful. And that, he believed, was the true reason behind her suicide. He hadn't told Julia earlier, fearing it might emotionally trigger her. Upon hearing this, Julia got angry and stormed out. Suddenly, a blackout occurred. But this time, it was serious. Julia realized she had lost nearly 90% of her vision. Isaac refused to talk further. He insisted they'd return home the next day, leave everything related to Sarah behind, and focus on Julia's treatment. However, the next day while checking out of the hotel, Crespulu privately informed Julia that 1 hour after Sarah had left the hotel, he found a key under her bed. Curiosity overwhelmed Julia, and she asked, "Did you ever see Sarah with a man?" He replied, "They call him the Invisible Man. No one here remembers who was with your sister." Crespulu then asked her, "Have you ever felt like you were among people or walking down the street, but no one notices you? As if you're living in a parallel universe? You're searching for someone who's like emptiness, like air. Someone you can't see, but can feel." He suggested she check the CCTV footage from a parking area 2 blocks from the hotel. Just then, Julia noticed someone trying to escape in the distance. She chased, but again failed to catch them. Somehow, she convinced Isaac to let her investigate the CCTV footage. But Isaac didn't want her going, so he went alone to collect the recordings. When he didn't return after half an hour, Julia asked a guard. The guard said someone had come earlier, paid him some money, and told him to stay silent. But he didn't know where that person went afterward. Suddenly, all the CCTV monitors went black and the electricity was cut. The guard discovered that someone had severed the main power line. And the recorded copy of the CCTV footage that was placed on the table? It had disappeared. Julia thought she saw someone, but due to her weak vision, she wasn't sure. She called the police and filed a report about Isaac's disappearance and the stolen CCTV footage. She suspected that Sarah's boyfriend might be involved. But how could the police possibly find this invisible man? Then they remembered Crespulu. When they went to his house, they found him lying dead from an electric shock. With no evidence at the scene and no known enemies, the police ruled it as suicide. However, this conclusion deeply upset Julia, so much that she blacked out again. After a medical checkup, the doctor informed her that she had only a few weeks, or possibly just 2 hours, left before she would go completely blind. She must avoid any emotional or shocking stress. After returning from the hospital, Julia spent time with Sauter. When she mentioned that Isaac was still missing, Sauter said, "Isaac left you on purpose, just like my husband did. One morning, I woke up to find that both my husband and my only son, Angel, were gone." Lia was watching their conversation from outside through the window. Just then, news came in. While on patrol, the police had noticed lights on inside Sarah's house. Accordingly, Officer Demas took Julia there. In the basement, they discovered a hanging body, along with a note written by Isaac. The note revealed that Isaac and Sarah had been in a relationship for the past 6 months. And that he had taken his own life, grieving her death. According to Demas, this is why Isaac had stolen the CCTV footage and hidden himself in Sarah's house. After learning all this, Julia was unable to bear the trauma and lost her vision entirely. She was admitted to the hospital. A few days later, she received an eye donor, and her surgery was completed. But when doctors asked her to stay under medication in the hospital, she refused. Julia said she would stay in Sarah's house until her bandages were removed. The doctor agreed, but on one condition: the hospital caretaker, Evan, would stay with Julia. Julia accepted the condition and requested that Isaac's body be preserved at the hospital until her eyes healed. Because she wanted to witness Isaac's final journey with her own eyes. After returning home, Julia gave the key from Crespulu to Blasco and asked him to check all the lockers and closed doors in Sarah's house. But the key didn't match any of them. After they left, the caretaker Evan knocked on the door. He began staying with Julia from morning until 9 p.m. Before leaving each night, he gave her a contact number to use in case of emergencies. Evan took care of everything for Julia: medication, cooking, cleaning. One morning, Julia woke up from a nightmare, sensing someone's presence in the room. She called Evan immediately, and he helped her get out of the house. But the unknown intruder had taken Sarah's key with them while leaving. The police arrived in the morning, but found nothing suspicious. Nothing had been stolen from the house. After that incident, nothing unusual happened to Julia, and over time, she and Evan developed a friendship. One rainy night, Julia woke from another nightmare and saw someone in her room, about to inject her with something. Sensing danger in time, she fled the room and ran into Blasco's house. She asked him to call the police. Then she heard the sound of a key being hung on the wall, and instantly recognized it. It was the same key given by Crespulu, the one that had been stolen from her house. What was it doing here? At that moment, Blasco tried to behave inappropriately with Julia. Terrified, she ran out and called Evan for help. He arrived just in time. Julia told him she would stay at his place for the night. Evan brought her home and calmed her down, asking her to rest. He was about to step out for an errand when someone entered the room. It was Leah. Startled, Julia backed away in fear. Leah revealed that she had once been a friend of Sarah. In fact, she was the one who had stolen Sarah's key from Julia's house. Leah confessed that from the very beginning, her attention had been on Julia. She asked, "Do you also have nightmares like Sarah? Where it feels like someone is trying to remove your bandages, or trying to insert needles into your eyes?" She continued, "The invisible man who lives in that deep darkness is no one else but your caretaker. He's the one who killed Sarah. And now, he wants to kill you too. And he's the one who murdered Isaac." Isaac didn't commit suicide. He forced Isaac to write that note as part of his plan. This psycho-invisible man's walls are covered with only one thing: photos of you and Sarah. But Julia didn't want to believe Leah's words. So Leah said, "Check the key you have from Sarah. It's the key to the main door." Following that, when Julia tried to unlock the door with Sarah's key, she realized the key was missing. At that moment, Evan arrived, and Leah quickly hid. Julia asked Evan to give her the key, saying, "It's my only memory of my sister." Evan picked the key up off the floor and said, "See? You probably dropped it yourself without realizing. But you don't need it right now. Let me make you some tea. You just get some rest." Even though Evan left, Leah couldn't run away with Julia, because the key was now with Evan. Leah said, "He wants to drug you and make you blind for life. So get that key back however you can. I'll wait in the bathroom." Julia began to believe Leah, at least partially. So she went into the bathroom, gathered courage, and removed her eye bandage, only to discover her vision had truly returned. Now it was time for proof. Coming out of the bathroom, she entered the adjacent room and was shocked. The walls were covered with pictures of Sarah and Julia, and next to them was the same camera. With all the evidence in front of her, Julia went looking for Leah, only to find Leah's body hanging from the corridor wall. Evan had brutally killed her by stabbing her face with a knife. Terrified, Julia sat down covering her eyes. When Evan asked what happened, she said, "Leah came and suddenly removed my bandage. I can't see anything now." But Evan grew suspicious of her behavior. To test if she was truly blind, he brought a knife close to her eyes. Somehow, Julia survived the test. She desperately tried to convince Evan that the surgery had failed. But Evan started performing more tests to check her reactions, like pretending to call the police or mixing poison in her tea. Julia, noticing the opportunity, secretly switched the teacups. But Evan noticed the tea had been moved, and grew more suspicious. As a final test, Evan brought her into the next room and asked her to open the freezer. Julia was horrified. Inside, frozen stiff, was the real hospital caretaker Evan's dead body. Startled, the fake Evan instantly realized that Julia had begun regaining her sight. Now the real question arose: who was this person with Julia? And what was his relationship with Julia and Sarah? As Julia tried to escape, Evan grabbed her and said, "You're scared of this? Real fear is feeling ignored and rejected in society every single day. You've never felt what it's like to hide in the silence and shadows of this bright world. When a girl loves a lonely night dweller like me, for the first time, I feel alive." This fake Evan had been ignored by friends and family since childhood, which led to a mental disorder known as social anxiety. People with this condition panic when others notice them, and over time, it had turned him into a psychopath. But among everyone, only Sarah had truly loved him. Because she couldn't see, Evan, a sociopath, felt comfortable around her. But he constantly feared that if she regained her sight, she would leave him. That's why, without her knowledge, he had been giving Sarah nerve-damaging medication, so she'd remain blind even after surgery. Unable to endure the pain of blindness and desperate to escape Evan, Sarah ultimately ended her life. So, whether directly or indirectly, Evan was responsible for Sarah's death. When Julia started her own investigation, Evan killed Crespulu, because Crespulu knew the most about him and was the only one who had seen him. In the same way, when Isaac saw Evan in the CCTV footage, Evan forced Isaac to write a fake love note about Sarah, and then killed him too. And now, it was Julia's turn. However, the fake Evan proposed to Julia. He said he had fallen in love with her and wanted to take her far away, to live together in an unknown place. But if you refuse, he warned, you'll meet the same fate. Left with no other option, Julia agreed to the proposal. Evan brought her back to Sarah's house to pack a bag. But seizing the opportunity, Julia escaped from the car and ran to Salda's house. She asked Sauter to call the police. Suddenly, Evan entered the house. They stood face to face, eyes filled with rage. And then Evan called Sauter mother. The real truth was revealed. The boy who had once run away from Sauter was none other than the fake Evan. His real name was Angel. He had loved Sarah, run away, killed the real Evan, the hospital caretaker, and taken his identity to care for Julia. Just then, Sauter struck Julia on the head from behind, knocking her unconscious. Angel, seeing what his mother had done, noticed the book and glasses on the table. He realized Sauter had never been blind. She had only pretended to be blind so Angel would feel she was important and wouldn't leave her. But the psychotic Angel couldn't bear that lie. He injected Sauter in the eyes, making her truly blind. Hours later, Julia regained consciousness. Due to the extreme stress, her eyes were already significantly damaged. Now they were in Sarah's basement. But what would happen next depended entirely on Julia's decision. Angel said that if Julia didn't agree to go with him, he would kill himself, just like Sarah. But that would take courage. And when Julia failed to harm herself, she pretended to accept Angel's offer to spend the rest of her life with him. She hugged him. At that moment, she took the knife hidden behind his back, stabbed his leg, locked the door, and ran upstairs to call Inspector Demas. Just as she ended the call, Angel attacked her. Trying to save herself, Julia cleverly shut down the main fuse of the house, plunging everything into darkness. In the shadows, Angel used the flash from a camera to search for Julia and kill her. Eventually, Julia attacked him with something heavy, but Angel, using all his strength, grabbed her by the throat. Fortunately, Inspector Demas and his police team arrived at that very moment. The psychotic Angel tried to hide in the darkness. But one after another, flashlights lit up, and every eye in the room was focused on Angel. Suddenly, Angel underwent a strange change. Frightened, he shouted, "Please don't look at me." And those were his final words. In the final stage of his social anxiety disorder, Angel took the knife and stabbed himself in the throat, committing suicide in front of everyone. Several days passed after that incident. Julia recovered her vision after a medical checkup. The doctor fulfilled her final wish by taking her to see Isaac's preserved body one last time. But then Julia noticed, Isaac's eyeballs were completely white. She asked the doctor in surprise, and the final mystery was revealed. Isaac had donated both his eyes to Julia before his death. Hearing this, Julia broke down in tears and hugged Isaac for the last time. She recalled their very first meeting. Isaac had once said, "Julia, I see the whole world in your eyes. Your eyes are like an ocean, reflecting all my dreams." Even after death, Isaac had kept his promise. And with that the movie ends.